Well, the first of the two that we're doing today is Tsuyoku Naratai versus the Egalitarian Instinct. Did I say that right?
You said
Close enough.
You said the first part right. You said egalitarian. It's egalitarian instinct. So you got the English
I
wrong.
was focusing so much on the Japanese.
So you Japanese-ified the English word.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. No worries. All right. So my one sentence summary of this is just like kind of where we've evolved impulses as social primates to like not want to, I guess, showboat when we're being exceptional. But basically, this doesn't mean that we shouldn't try.
Yeah.
And that, there might be good reasons for humility to I don't know, not say how easy something was, or I guess I am the best at that. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't actually try to be the best.
Yeah.
So I think it's just maybe I'm assuming this is some response to feedback on the Tsuyoku Naitai episode on post, but
It seemed to me, I don't know, it seemed like it was just a postscript to Tsuyoku Naratai, and they could have almost been one post. But here's the weird thing. I recall the first time I read this being like really, I don't know if moved is the right word, but I was like, yeah, that's right, exactly. Going along with it, I was like, I was very happy to see this. And now going back and reading it, it didn't really touch anything in me at all. And I don't know if that's because I've changed or what, but
you're just less humble now.
Yeah, maybe you just totally took it to heart and you're reading it now and you're like, yeah, obviously.
Anyway, but it basically, are you familiar with this was made all the rounds, I think, about a year ago. It's been going on forever, though, because obviously hunter-gatherers. The insulting the meat thing?
Mm-mm.
Okay, there's not a hunter-gatherer tribe anymore, but like a tribe that's still very much in the old living sense, and they hunt for meat, and if someone comes in with like a really impressive game catch that they did most of the work themselves, everyone knows they did this, right? When they bring in the meat, they're like, oh man, this is bad meat, and like everyone in the tribe insults the meat.
Oh, I did hear something about this recently.
Yeah.
Where did I hear this? You wouldn't know, but
Right,
something recently.
Yeah, but it was, everyone knows it's good meat, and they're still all impressed with what he did, but like they say, yeah, we gotta keep people humble, so they don't get too big heads or anything. And it's a weird ritual, but a lot like every society has that, right?
Yeah, some more than others.
I think I just saw this like in a link in the comment section of a Slate Star Codex post on Reddit or something. It was something obscure, but I just saw something like that in the last week where it was like, don't insult the meat, and it was a hyperlink. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? And so I just read about this. Okay, yeah. So the goal is to keep the triumphant murderer of this, I guess not, whatever, the successful hunter of this food humble by saying, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I've had better.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Everyone remember Liar Liar? That was
Yes.
classic. That was what that line reminds me of.
No.
Was that a direct reference, or was that an
No, I
accident?
didn't. I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's a great movie if you can stand whatever late 90s or early 2000s Jim Carrey. The premise is he can't lie for a day, and he's this asshole lawyer. And he first discovers this when he's got some girl that he took home for the night.
His boss.
Oh, it was his boss. And
Yes.
She was like, that was a great night, huh? And he's like, I've had better. And he's like laughing at himself in the mirror. He's like, why would I say that? All right, yeah. That's my movie digression. It's that time of the night. I kept it together for the podcast, or for the guest mostly. So
I'm proud of you.
I'm all over the place. Thank you.
But it was basically a post pushing back against that, saying, you know what? If you do keep trying to make yourself stronger and make yourself better, you will be, possibly better than some people.
You run the risk of succeeding.
Exactly, yes. And that's okay. Just keep trying your best. There'll be other people that are better than you in most other things, and that's fine too. People are not all the same, and different people can excel in different things, and stop trying to stifle everything and keep everybody at the same level of meh.
Yeah, I like that. There was
just in the interests of everyone being egalitarian.
Yeah, and I think it's tough because there was actually a good little quote in there that I didn't pull out that was, you might be better than the average person at some things, but the average person's better than people who are below average at things by definition, right? And so somebody could charge you with like, why would you try and do better than them? That's so rude of you. And it's like, oh well, come on, we're not going to buy that. It's like I might suck at math. That doesn't mean that you should like
suck at it
Yeah,
too.
that you should suck at it too, certainly.
Yeah.
What, if anything, it should mean that unless we have an agreement, like we're friends and I won't be offended if you're better than me at it, that you don't rub it in my face, right? If I'm thin-skinned about it or something. But that doesn't mean that just because you know people or people in your tribe aren't, I think that's it. If you try, you might run the risk of actually succeeding. And it doesn't even seem to, in my reading of the post, didn't even really seem to like admonish that you ought to express humility. It's saying that it might be politically savvy for you to express humility.
If you absolutely must
Yeah.
express humility, then I guess go ahead and do that. Seemed to be kind of the vibe going on there.
I think, yeah, it was sort of a take pride in your accomplishments sort of feel. And I think one of the reasons it probably talked to me more back then was because I was closer to high school. And in high school, there's a lot of like, you get nerd shamed, or at least back in my day you did,
Nerds are totally accepted now, Inyash. It's 2019.
They control the world now, so now they pick on jocks in high school? Is this how it works?
I think they get the robots to beat them up.
Oh,
yeah.
Sweet. We didn't have robots back in my day. You couldn't just like flash your iPhone at someone and stun them.
I think it is. I think it's partly a cultural shift too. I think it's only been recently, and I guess I'm not super into the community or the cutting edge, but I talk with people in the rationalist community who are working on trying to find like non-asshole ways of saying, yes, I'm successful, and it's because of rationality. Like that's in edges at least of the community that I'm involved with directly. That's sort of a new position. Like you don't want to be, I don't know, saying yes, I'm doing well or something, right? And to give it credit to this, I think that's kind of where this post was going. Is like, hey, if you guys start kicking ass because you go to cognitive sciences and biases and stuff, don't feel ashamed to plug the old rationality thing.
I think a lot of that was just beat into, I don't know if us in general, but me anyway, in high school, the, don't display your smartness because you'll get punished for it. And this is like saying, you know what, fuck it.
That's a lot of religious communities too. There's like the whole idea about how you're not supposed to take credit for things you have done because God did it. And nobody's better than anybody else because we're all children of God.
Yeah, I got to say that maddens me a lot whenever I see some of that sentiment, isn't God great this happened? And I know we've been railing on religion lately. Maybe we're on a kick. But I don't like that sentiment because you never see it in reverse. And it's like, oh man, God sucks. He just killed all those babies in New Orleans because that's not God's fault. But the response to it is when people give money and time and run out there to go help, that's God helping. Like, no, that's people helping. Mm-hmm. We don't make the weather. We help. And I love there's a charitable interpretation of the sentiment, like look for God in the human response. That sounds like a, almost Mr. Rogers vibe, right? And that's super wholesome and friendly. Like, no, look for kindness in the response to tragedy and that sort of stuff. I like that.
Yeah.
But attributing it to an agent rather than like taking it from the person, that sounds like a drag.
Yeah, there's ways it can be phrased in such a way. Like I like that Mr. Rogers or Rogers phrasing. But I have like seen it really explicitly being used to rebuke young people for being too high and mighty.
Oh yeah.
And again, like I'm thinking about like specifically I don't know. So there's some religions that seems to be the more fundamentalist ones. Like I don't know if it maybe because I'm trying to figure out where this kind of egalitarian instinct maybe comes from. I feel like psychologically there might be something useful, or there might have been, if you're in like a pretty scarce society, to tell people don't like push yourself up as being higher than the rest of the community because they need everybody to be, to be prioritizing the community. Not that I'm trying to say that I disagree with the post either, but I'm just trying to figure out where it came from.
This is on my mind because we were literally just talking about Harry Potter before the show started, which if you're a Patreon sponsor, you can hear. It's for our Patreons only in the extras bits. But we were saying like how some people really hate Harry at the beginning of Harry Potter and the Message of Rationality, right? And like I even knew someone who, very nerdy, good friend of mine, very smart, started reading it and was like, Harry Potter is such a little asshole. He's like a jerk and he's all arrogant and jumped up. And when we were talking about this just now, I was like, Harry Potter was fully embracing the Tsuyoku versus egalitarian instinct. He was like, here's some things I'm good at. There's certain kinds of smartness and I'm happy about it and proud about it. And I'm not going to like hide it and try to pretend that I'm a muggle.
There was a great line in the latter part of the book. It was during one of the wars when it was just him and Neville versus Hermione's army and the rest of Chaos Legion was fighting Dragon Army. And he was like, what, am I supposed to be the last person in the school to notice how awesome I am? Which is about as arrogant as he gets. But this was like, I think I brought this up with, in my undergraduate psych major, I had to take an abnormal psych class, which was like the, whatever, psychological diagnoses for disorders and stuff. And it was like one of those stadium seating things. There's like 200-300 people, and I was constantly up in the balcony because I liked up there, and I'd be raising my hand to ask questions, and the teacher was, was willing to engage me, shouting over the balcony. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions I asked was like narcissism or something, narcissistic personality disorder. And I was like, what if you really just are as awesome as you think you are? Mm-hmm. Like, was Isaac Newton a narcissist? I mean, he'd probably been a nightmare to interact with, but he basically was as badass maybe as he thought he was, right?
Yeah.
So like, is the grandiosity, is the delusion of grandiosity a necessary requirement for this disorder? And I think, I don't remember what the answer was. Probably depends. Like if it's ruining your life, it's basically when it's a problem,
okay.
Or when it's diagnosed.
Or making everyone else hate you, which I guess would ruin your life.
Yeah.
That friend of mine, I think she specifically didn't like Harry because he talked back to adults.
I've heard that from a lot of people who've read the story, particularly adults who have kids.
Yeah.
Or art teachers. Kids. But that's really weird to me because it's like this, okay, children should be submissive mindset, which if the kid is right, then the kid's right. You gotta like, as the adult, you should be a little bit more modest and maybe be like, oh.
I think it's that same instinct of people should know their place in society and not like, act like they're better than everyone else wants them to be. You
could see where it was adaptive probably, back in the day for kids to be submissive, but not anymore. Not as much.
Yeah, not if they're Harry Potter, James Evans Varys.
Yeah, I think the hard part is that, like, in a lot of ways, most kids aren't people. And, like, that's one of the things that Harry points out is like, oh, sure, I'm not a person, I'm just a kid. And something to that effect. But, like, the parent who has to spend an hour arguing with their, the hunter-gatherer parent, arguing with their kid about, like, why you shouldn't go over and play near that lake that's full of alligators, like, that kid's just going to get eaten, right? Because they're going to either not agree and they're going to go over and get eaten, or they're going to burn their parent out or whatever, right?
Well, even
we sort of have that now with traffic.
Right.
But
even the parent that has to argue with their kid in the middle of a grocery store why they can't have another, bag of lollipops or something is going to feel that same way.
Yeah, I'm really interested in running the experiment on my niece, that like just treating her like a human adult the whole time. Because it worked on my cousin, but she I think she's exceptional. I think, we'll see where my niece is at. I'm sure she'll be great too. But like, just I could imagine being at the store with some screaming kid. But I guess I'm not mine because mine wouldn't do that. Whatever. But I think if you have the rapport of like being a reasonable person to engage the whole time, which the hard part is like kids you can't reasonably engage. I know we're pretty far afield, but whatever. When they're kids and they're just mad and they don't know why, like they can't articulate their own feelings. Quick sidebar. Sam Harris's wife, teaches meditation to children as young as 5 and 6.
Teaches what?
Meditation.
Oh.
Just basic like introspection, but they can get children, I think, around the age of 5 plus or minus a year to like label their emotions, and just the presence of mind to be like, oh yeah, I am happy or I am sad, like that reflective awareness of your emotional state.
A lot of adults don't have that.
A lot of adults don't have that, exactly. And so if a kid can look in and be like, I'm mad right now, and if they're aware enough of that, I think I imagine that's the kind of child you can engage with, in who's having a fit in the store and be like, you're upset right now, aren't you? Do you want to talk about it? I think, I don't know. I'm kind of, the best part about being an uncle as opposed to a parent is that like the kid's not my problem. Yeah. So like if it just won't shut up, I take it back to its mom's house and it's her problem again, right?
Like they're referring to it as an it.
Yeah. Now it's an it. Now that it's a problem, she's not a problem. She's the person when she's fine. When it's making noise, then it's annoying.
Yeah. I don't know, until I was in my mid-20s, always just treated kids like people, like other adults.
Yeah.
I mean, not as experienced, but whatever. And kids seem to really love me, which I was like, okay, that's weird, but sure, whatever. And I didn't really put two together. Then I started being socialized with how adults are supposed to treat kids. And like now it's really hard for me to go back. But yeah, kids not nearly as fond of me anymore.
I think you just talk to them and be like, hey, what are you up to?
Yeah.
What do you I don't know. Talk to them like you would a person.
Right. Now
it's a weird thought. Maybe it's easier.
Harder to do now. I don't know why. I've gotten to the point where like, oh, you are a fragile alien object, or
like a pet or something.
Yeah.
No, it's much easier to interact with kids on that level as if they were a pet. I had to deal with a lot of kids when I worked at the library, and I had a really hard time trying to treat all the kids like people. The thing with methods of rationality, and I'm trying to form a coherent thought here. There's some kids that are, prodigies. I know a lot of kids that had been child prodigies really love methods of rationality because they related to Harry a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think I really liked the Harry character because I could think back to being a kid and feeling frustrated with not being treated like a person. And I think a lot of kids harbor resentment around that. So the reason they probably really loved you is that they don't get that from adults in their life. They don't get any kind of validation of like, oh, your feelings are valid, this thought you had is interesting. So, yeah, I try to keep that in mind. It does get difficult, though, with the kids that are more frustrating to deal with. Yeah. Who tend to have less of that kind of theory of mind going on, or are just like very impulsive. Or kids that have behavioral problems just act out and want to throw things. You can't reason with that kid as easily as you can with the kid that like is reading N.K. Jemisin.
Right.
And like programming in Python.
I related to the character of Harry from Methods of Rationality because I wished I was a child prodigy, and I was like, oh, I wish I was that cool as a kid. But yeah, I think unless you had any desire for that sort of outstandingness or were that kid, then I could see I'd be off-putting to some people. I think we were talking about like some of the critiques of the show, of the character before we started recording, and one thing is that like people who don't really know what to expect, they get into it, and they're like, that's not an 11-year-old, this is stupid, and it's not like the author's unaware that's not how 11-year-olds usually talk, and there's an in-universe explanation for why this kid is weird. So yeah,
well, he was also like an author mouthpiece, but I think Yukowski was a child prodigy.
He was, and he was.
There are 11-year-olds that do talk like that.
Yeah, I've met some.
Yeah.
It's uncanny.
I bet. Yeah, I think it's an aside thing, but yeah.
Should we move?
Yeah, the last. I'll read us on to the next one with the end quote from this last post, which was "Saruku nai tai." I'll always run as fast as I can, even if I pull ahead. I'll keep on running, and someone someday will surpass me. But even though I fall behind, I'll always run as fast as I can. And that's sort of like the same spirit, Like I don't have to be the best in the world, but I'm gonna be the best me that I can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way that you put it last time resonated with me a lot. It was like I'm not gonna compare myself to the Olympic athlete. I'm gonna compare myself to myself. And I'm gonna beat me at it. That's important. I love that. That should have been in this. That should have been in the thing. That's the way I paraphrase in my head all the time now.
Cool.
All right. Statistical bias.
Statistical bias.
Quotes.
In quotes. Yeah. So this one at first really intimidated me because it had like a bunch of math, and math isn't like an intuitive thing to me. I had to like sit down and analyze it to understand what it was saying, and it took some time and some effort. But really, it in my opinion, you could have stripped out the math from this post entirely. It just seemed to be saying that when a system is biased to not give a correct result, then running many tests will eventually, it'll converge onto a result, but that may not be the correct result. Like, for example, if you roll a 6-sided die, you may not necessarily know what side is going to come up, but if you keep rolling it long enough, eventually you'll notice that the 6 comes up 16.6% of the time. Unless it's a weighted die, and then there's bias in the system, and if you keep rolling it thousands of times, you'll eventually get to the 6 comes up like 21% of the time. And be like, oh, that's interesting. Dice come up on 6 21% of the time. Okay. Which is, it's just wrong, but it's not because you were doing the experiments wrong or doing the statistical analysis wrong. Everything you were doing was right. It's just the system has an inherent bias in it.
I'm with you. I think the post could have been done without math, and part of me wonders if it was just like running with the theme of the last post of like, yeah, I didn't have to be this smart when I wrote this, but I am, and here you go. I don't think that was an expressed goal, but it made me kind of chuckle when I thought of that.
The example he gave was the Emperor of China is actually 200 centimeters, and if in the U.S. on average people think he's 190 centimeters with a variation of like 10 centimeters, you can ask one person and he'll say he's 180 centimeters, and they'll be off by 10. And someone else will say, he's 200 centimeters, and they'll actually be correct. But if you keep surveying enough people, they'll all converge onto 190, and that's through the law of large numbers. You eventually got to what the system believes his height is, even though they're off by 10% statistically, or in reality, rather, they're off by 10 centimeters. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I'm just noticing how many of the variables in the equations here are E and Y, which are Eliezer Yudkowsky's initials. Maybe that's why he got into math. It was easy for him to keep his attention. Yeah, I don't have much to add to that other than this is one of the posts that like I think it sets up for other posts better than it does stand on its own.
Yeah.
There's not a
Yeah.
lot to really gain and run with here. It doesn't inspire me. I don't remember it in a way that anything like that.
Sometimes systems will be biased and give you information that does not accurately reflect the real world, no matter how good your methods are.
Yeah, I think this post was meant to specifically lay groundwork for and lead into the next one, the useful statistical biases. But in of itself, it's kind of just stating a fact about statistics.
Okay.
Well, if we'd thought ahead with more than a couple hours-ish before the podcast, we would have read the third one with this, but it's behind suspense for a couple of weeks.
Huzzah.